what got me through work was you.
And when you have a bad leader, what is going on, everybody? We're making progress. Episode 8 now. And today, we're going to talk about something fun. A little backstory on me, a little backstory on Kirk. From our last conversation, we touched on a point to where essentially I didn't realize the impact that I had on Kirk. And we're going to talk a little bit about the impact that he had on me when we kind of met, when we conjoined. It was a very interesting time for the both of us. So we're going to have that conversation today.
All right, man. Listen, how the hell did we make it to episode 8? The year has flown by.
Hey, just keep doing it, man. Just keep doing it. We've had to adjust and adapt a little bit too because we haven't been able to record on our schedule every day too. So that's always been fun.
The good news is I feel like we got ahead of the game that one time when we recorded back to back. So that's beautiful. But I feel like time is just moving by so quickly, man. I'm happy that we're here. I'm happy that we made it to episode 8, and you know what, the further we get into this, the more natural it feels like. I just look forward to the conversation. So pretty exciting stuff, man.
Think about that. Think about this. 6 years ago, I walk into the store, we sit back, have a little conversation in the back office. I wasn't in the best of places, and I don't think you were particularly either, but that was an interesting conversation, to be honest with you, man. It was me striving to push forward and somebody actually giving me the ability. So I'm going to get a little bit into the backstory, introduce you guys to me, introduce you guys to who I was when Kirk and I met, so you can see the impact and kind of tell you from my perspective. And then Kirk will tell you a little bit from his. So it'll be, I would say, a little bit more long from either our perspectives, but you guys are going to get to know us, get to know our story, get to know where we came from. So this was back when I was, I don't know, 24 years old. I started working for a retail auto parts company, Advanced Auto Parts. If anybody's watching this for some reason on the West Coast, I don't know if they're that popular over there, but either way, I had a 1-year-old child. I was working a traditional, we'll call it 9 to 5, even though it was nowhere near a 9 to 5. This was just got out of college, stopped playing college baseball. I was in a relationship that I was, no, I just got out of a relationship at that point, but coming off of a relationship that I was very unsatisfied in. And I was looking to grow, looking to move forward. Obviously, I was a dad, so I needed to make some money. And I was just looking to advance. I was looking to make as much money as I could with the path that I was on at the time, which I know a lot of people can relate to that. You kind of get a job because you have to and you make the best of it. And that's exactly where I was. I, at that point, had gone up about 2 positions from where I had started. I was working with a manager, which Kirk knows, and if anybody else used to work in that environment, they know, was not a very good example, was not a very good people person, was not there for his employees, was not there to make anyone better in any way, shape, or form. And when you have a bad leader, the whole team suffers. I suffered as an individual. I was very unhappy at work, like to the point where, so I was making what I think it was like $9 an hour at the time. And I was looking to buy my house, not this house, but another house that I was looking for. And I didn't qualify because I wasn't making enough money. I needed a 25-cent raise, 25 cents a quarter, like a couple $100 a year. And I asked for that raise for that particular reason. Hey, I need the 25
Hey,
cents because of
I'm
this reason.
still I'm still tripping out that you bought a house and all you needed to make was $9.25 an hour. Fast forward post COVID, we need $29.25 an hour within 5 years
Bro,
or 6 years. Holy shit! I'm
listen,
sorry.
man.
Go ahead.
No. And it ended up being more than that. But the place that I was looking for at the time was then, and it was less than $100,000. It was beautiful. But either way, I ended up asking for that $25. This is a situation where I'm from the bottom of the totem pole. We'll say I'm in position number 2, doing work for position number 3, because position number 3 and position number 4, one of them quit and 2 of them were fired. So it was me doing the job of these 2 people, which were, I guess we'll call it a shift manager, and then one person was an assistant manager, and I was doing all of their jobs because there was really only like 6 employees to work the retail floor, which at the store that it was required significantly more people. So I was there working 7 days a week at night from, I think it was 6 to 10, to not work overtime. And by the way, this is all, we're missing people, but I have to work 7 days a week to not work overtime. I'm doing all the jobs of these other people. And I asked for a 25-cent raise. I was told that the district manager, pushing it up, said no because I got a raise whenever I got promoted from the previous position to the forward one. And I didn't, right? So this person didn't ask, lied to my face in a situation where I needed a quarter to put a roof over my family's head. At this moment, I completely stopped, 100% completely stopped. I stopped doing the job of other people. I became, I'm going to do what I need to do for my job, and that's it. I got kicked out of the store, essentially. I got promoted, but transferred to another store for about 6 months. From there, I wanted to go back because the store that I was working at was the largest in Jacksonville at the time. I knew that my career path needed to be there to continue stepping up because of the exposure. That was where the corporate office was. That's where all the higher ups came in. I needed to be back at that store, and I needed to succeed at that store to be able to get promoted. I had a just higher chance of doing it. Throughout those 6 months, that manager left, went somewhere else. Kurt came in and became the store manager of this particular store. So I came in, had a conversation with him, and just told them, more or less what had happened, what that situation was, and what I was looking to do. And that is where our paths actually crossed. How did that time look for you, building up to right there? We can kind of continue it in just a little bit.
So let's talk about me. So what was that? 2017, I believe. I can't remember what month it was specifically. I had just stepped down. All right, so we'll back up a little bit. All right, so I was a commercial area manager, is what we'll call it, right? So I covered the west side of Jacksonville, and I was ranked the number one, area manager at the time from a sales environment. Trained everybody, all that good jazz. Everybody came through me. I was just crushing it. Okay, didn't like the job. That wasn't what I was meant to be. That's not what I wanted to do, but I knew that that was a stepping stone to get me in the right direction. I think at the time I was, God, I don't even know how old I was, man. Probably 25, 24. No, I was 25, 26. So I'm a couple years older than you. Unhappy in the job, right? I applied to be a district manager a couple of times and I didn't get the job. The challenge for me at the time was I didn't have the mental maturity to understand that things don't happen for a reason. So I applied for the job. One of my mentors, who's my mentor now, and I learned a lot from, but pissed me off. Hey, I was second in line to get the district manager role. They went with an external candidate. The guy told me he was going to give me some feedback and in a few weeks, but that he needed me to stay and roll. Fair. Wasn't happy with it emotionally, obviously, because I felt like I was kind of groomed for that role. So mentally, I felt like I was kind of lied to. I felt like there was kind of a dangled carrot in front of my face. When you look at that, man, what I didn't know at that age is that everything does happen for a reason and that you need to be told no multiple times in order for you to understand your place in the world and that the opportunity is there. Fast forward a little bit, I left the company. I went to the competition, literally within 2 weeks, had a job, got a raise as a store manager. So I stepped down back into the store real fast and pretty much told them to go pound sand. Keep in mind, I was young, immature at the time, and I was trying to prove a point. During all of this, we were having our third child. The third child, it was pretty tumultuous because I wasn't happy in the job role. I wasn't happy mentally. I spent a lot of time working, and because I found my validation through work, and when work wasn't going well, I took that and I internally allowed that to impact my psyche. So that was kind of like a tipping stone for me when it comes to my journey of mental mindset progression, the obstacles, the way like that began my journey of battling the adversity. Fast forward 2 weeks later, the company took me back, which I find to be very interesting. I cannot believe it all worked out that way because I sent some interesting letters to HR, I believe at the time. I can't remember, but I definitely rattled some branches for sure. Came back, had a conversation with the guy that told me he was going to give me feedback, and he explained himself a little bit more, which is all I wanted originally. Had that been avoided, I would have wouldn't even left. I think the learning opportunity for him and for me during the time, and I've used this to my advantage for other people, is just be honest with people, man. Just be honest with them. If they're not ready to work, I think there was a fear because I was younger and maybe I was a little bit spicier back then that maybe I would have left and that would have hurt. But in that fear, you created that fear and you created the reality. So I left. If you would have avoided it and told me the things that he needed to say right up front, I wouldn't have left. I would have been a little salty about it, but ultimately it worked out to my advantage regardless. I came back to that store, and obviously it was the number one store in the city of Jacksonville. So I ended up coming back to the company. It all happened for a reason, man. Like I realized, long story, and we'll get into it a little bit later, but long story short, I came in and realized why I didn't get the job the previous two times. So it benefited me greatly, and I grew a lot. I grew a lot those 2 years, and that's why I met you, man. So we'll pause there, and I'll throw it back to you real fast, and we can vibe off of each other.
Oh man. So for me at that point when I came back, I was very sour, had a very bad experience with management, had a very bad experience with the whole corporate ladder. Personally in my life, I was in a very not satisfied situation. I could tell you that I was probably at the worst because I just come off of a career with baseball. I just had to sacrifice that for a family and for obligations because at that time personally I didn't realize that I could still have my dream and have a family. I didn't know that that was something that you could have. I didn't know that like right now I have the freedom of choice to pick a job and do
You
that. At that
you
time I didn't
lived
realize that.
every kid's nightmare. Everything that your parents told you in every TV commercial that said if you have a kid, your life's over. So
And
it kind of
I forced myself into that. Like literally,
yep.
I forced myself into that, man. As soon as I found out that I was having a kid, I essentially started looking for, low end, bottom end jobs. And it was like literally not what I wanted. So I can tell you that I was probably at the lowest point in my adult life. I was 22, 23. So yeah, lowest point in my adult life. I was just taking the punches, man. I was taking what life was throwing at me. I wasn't living. I wasn't thriving. I was just doing. However, my mentality, me as an individual, naturally, I want to succeed. I want to do my best. So, with the situation that I was in, not knowing that it was my mentality that put me there in the first place, I still wanted to achieve, right? I still wanted to move forward. I transferred to a different store, 6 months, performed there well enough to where I began to have conversations to go back and want to escalate. So, even though I was at the lowest, my personality still wanted to strive, still wanted to move forward in that environment and get as far as I possibly could. I didn't have a plan to be a district manager, a regional manager, anything like that. I just wanted to take it as far as I could. That was my goal. Make a little bit more money, stop living paycheck to paycheck, which in that environment, you're always going to live paycheck to paycheck for the most part. Just how it is. So I sat down, have a conversation with Kirk. He decided that it was, something that would work out for the both of us. Obviously, you can speak on your perspective from that. But from there forward, I transferred in as a parts pro, which was just a lateral move for me to become an assistant manager because there was already an assistant manager in place, and then to move forward from there. But throughout that year and a half that we interacted, dude, I got the greatest juxtaposition. And we talked about this a little bit, and you understand you compared to this other individual, but I didn't. Right within my first week, you handed me a book, 21 Habits. 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And we went through, and every single week I had a chapter. I had something to learn. At that point in my life, I knew what work was. I knew what grind was from a sports perspective. If anybody out there is an athlete, athletes have like 80 to 90% of everything that it takes to be the most successful people around because it takes all of that to be successful in whatever a sport is. You have work ethic, you have literally just brute forcing yourself, doing the reps, doing everything. Being able to apply that to something else is difficult. But if you're able to take your sports experience and bring that into life, any athlete can be a savage, any athlete. So if you're out there and you have an athlete mindset and it's something that you did, if you put yourself back in that situation, back in that grind to be successful in whatever sport it is that you played, that's life right there. So I put myself back on that horse. I had that and I understood it from a grind perspective. I didn't understand it from a mental planning perspective. I didn't understand it from an influencing other people perspective. This book, this situation, this whole literally the whole leadership experience that I was put in at that situation because of where he was on that grind exposed me to another world. I didn't even know it was a thing. It really wasn't. And to me, when I started reading this stuff, I was like, wow, this is cool. Don't get me wrong. I was 22, 23 years old. So most of the time I was like, this is fucking bullshit. I had to read this stupid fucking book. But as I did it, as I did it, I began to understand as I saw it, as I saw the example of how people gravitated towards you, particularly, how I gravitated towards you, particularly, how you had the ability, just like a coach in sports, how you had the ability to be hard on someone and gain their respect. I didn't realize what that was. I do now, and I kind of did back then. But most of the time, all of my favorite teachers, all of my favorite coaches were the ones that had the ability to tell you, shut the fuck up, do what you need to do, put your head down and grind. And for some reason, I respected those people more than the people that just went, it's okay. Don't worry about it. And I don't know why. I didn't know why at the time. I 100% do now. But you were that person to me that literally forced me to put the pedal to the metal, that said, hey, look, this is what it's going to take for you to get to where you're going. You gave me that juxtaposition to take sports effort and put it into a corporate environment and begin to build and understand what those Lego pieces were because of the fact that you were difficult. And like at the store in that environment, don't get me wrong, like there's a lot of people that were, this person's a little bit more out there. You were obviously high energy. You were a person that was, pushing everyone at the same level. And some people just don't have that mentality, but that wasn't me. Right. I literally just came off of a sports career where I did this every single day. I was talking to my wife the other day, and coming out of college, we practiced for like 6 hours a day, 6 days a week, more than a job, because obviously this is physical labor for that amount of time. So I was off of that. And you gave me the juxtaposition where that, like, it just clicked. It literally just clicked over the course of time. And as I began to do it, so that's where my learning journey, my growing journey actually began for me. That's where you impacted me the most. Obviously, the day to day grind was a little bit different. As I look back at it, I would say that my interactions with you as a leader was the changing point from that low that I had just got off of and started to peak back up, because now I had the ability to look at, hey, I want to be a store manager. Now I can see it. Now I know what reps I need to take. Now I need to know what my day-to-day activities are so that I can actually achieve exactly what it is. And you taught me what those corporate reps were, because I didn't know, right? I just knew how to brute force it. So I could do all of my tasks every single day, but I didn't know the nuance of, hey, I have to sit on my back leg as a pitcher to actually get a little bit more velocity into the ball, where, hey, now I have to be able to take this person, have this conversation, have them level up. So this area of my business increases, right? Everything with sports is self, but everything in business is others. And I was able to take that nuance of my personal rep and bring it to someone else. And I had that experience through you.
Listen, I would say most people, and it's just a side note, I would say most people don't understand, like they get too caught up in the day to day life instead of looking at it as a journey, right? They're not a student to the game. And I think that when you look at leadership and retail, I said it time and time and again, and I still think this way. I was telling people when I was introducing a new class for a store that we're opening up right now, this is your stadium, man. That's why I like leadership so much and I like retail so much, is because it is the retail stadium. And listen, when you and I worked together, it was like somebody said it to me the other day on Facebook, and it brought back some memories. And I still have the original picture that you guys gave me before I got promoted, that, we are the champions, right? And we sang that song all the time. That was the energy, and that was the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I just played it like a game. I mean, I was an athlete as well. I didn't play college ball. I played high school ball, and I got hurt. But I played all kinds of sports throughout my career, and I just enjoyed that type of energy, and I enjoyed playing the game. And for me to get through life, I mean, listen, I didn't wake up when I was younger and say that I wanted to work in retail. Much like you, we had to leverage the opportunity to create a career. For another story, another time, I had my first, what I thought to be my first child at the age of 17, 18, right? It threw me for a loop. So I had to take the hand that I was dealt, much like yourself. And I had two options. Either I can go through pure misery or I can make something of myself. So I just kind of looked at it as a simulation, that this was my game. This was my coach. This was my arena. And I hustled the same way that I played sports, much like you did. It just came to me naturally at first. Then I hit a lull when I was going into that store, I hit a lull. I used to be very optimistic all the time, and optimism is can be a false reality. I was very optimistic all the time, right? And then life hit me like a ton of bricks when I was navigating the trenches of trying to get promoted and trying to expand my family and going through, personal and family and blending that together and not getting things in the right timeline and being stuck. There's a lot of things that I weathered at that chapter when you and I met, and I wasn't happy, but I used work as a happy. It had nothing to do with my wife. It had nothing to do with anything necessarily other than financial gain, I guess. And money is not a motivator specifically. Like, yes, money makes life more enjoyable. I'm not saying that I want to walk around in a penthouse like Donald Trump. Would that be nice? Absolutely. I just want to be able to be financially free enough to do what I want to do when I want to do it. And through that, I will become wealthy, right? I strongly believe that. I told my wife a long time ago I'd make X figure by 30 and I'd make X figure by 40. I've already reached the first goal. I reached it beforehand, right? So I'm on point, man. I just didn't know how to understand the obstacle. But let's go back into you and I for a second. So I think I told you this a long time ago, but I'll just say it for here. Like, I was told no when I was bringing you on board. By the way, they told me not to bring you on board. Nobody was a fan of Kevin. Nobody was a fan of Kevin because they were misinformed. I can't even remember that manager's name that you worked for at the time, the young peckerhead. I didn't like him. He wasn't working on the weekends, and I knew it. And you're in that weird, interesting angle where you want to report that to your boss, but you can't really say anything because then you look like you're snitching. But I end up doing something about it. I end up saying something for sure right before you came over. However, I was grinding in the trenches, right, and that guy wasn't. But hopefully he's listening because he sucks. It is what it is. But yeah, I was told no, man. They said no. Kevin's not going to be a good manager. Don't bring him up. And at that time, much like the Yankees in their offseason, I was trying to build a pretty good class of people so we could win the championship, right? I felt like we did. I think we were top three in a lot of different metrics. We had a lot of time, and you were one of my draft picks, man, because of I saw something in you for sure. I also saw a lot of pain in you, and I could resonate with that. So for me, like one of my greatest joys in what I do for a living and what I've done in life so far, and I think there's a lot of content around it, is we become. I don't want to say we become. There's no greater feeling than helping somebody else out, man. There's no greater feeling. And that's why I love my job as a leader. That's why it would be very hard for me to be independently structured. Like I couldn't be a real estate agent. Couldn't do it. Just couldn't do it. Could I do it on the side for sure to hustle and learn more about the business? Absolutely. But I can't work by myself like that. And it's not because I need to be with somebody. I can be alone. Trust me. I'm okay with that. But I like to impact and help other people. Hence the title of this conversation. That's what makes me happy. That's what I'm most passionate about. That's where I get my validation from, is helping other people. And I saw pain in you, man. I saw a lot of pain in you, and I was going through a lot of pain internally as well. Number one. Number two, you're smart. You were smart, too smart. I think there's a such thing as too smart at the time for sure. But when you look at that, I was like, okay, this guy can do something. And essentially, listen, it's like a Steve Jobs thing. If you're an Apple fan out there, hire people who are smarter than you, number one. Number two, surround yourself with smart people so you can let them do the job. That way you don't have to micromanage them. And number three, I'm going to learn from you. So it was a triple win for me. I was going to learn from you because you're extremely intelligent. It was going to make my job easier because of the way you thought through things, because I do move very quickly on certain things and I'll overlook certain things. I already know that about myself because I like to go, 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 go. I'm not that way anymore, but I was back then. So it was a triple win. So I had to talk my boss into hiring you. And then it was like, okay. And what's funny about it is he told me then, like, you can have him, but he's not going to get promoted to a store manager. I said, okay, that's fine. I wrote that check. I knew exactly what I was getting myself into. And it's funny, you fast forward, he was the one that picked you to be a store manager. But you know who he called? He called me first. He's like, what would you do if you were the district manager? And I said, I'd promote him. Let me tell you why, right? Here's your pros, here's his strengths, here's the opportunity that you're going to have while managing him, and here's how to navigate him real fast, right? I laugh at that because it happens far too often. There's people out there that get looked over because they're in the wrong environment. And unfortunately, when you are a district manager, you're not in the trenches every single day. So he only knew what he had heard from the guy that was managing you. And he made that a reality for him. But there was also a lot of trust in that manager, that manager was doing very good too. So my job was I wanted to befriend you in a leadership perspective to see if I can support you. I didn't know this is where we would be at right now. But secondly, my job was to also prove that you could be a manager. And I did. I proved it. Like, I changed that. I helped what you didn't know at the time change the perception of you in that time by the people that were leading that district. That was my job. If I could impact you some way, shape, or form, I could get you where you needed to be at. Not saying that being a store manager for that company was a long-term career play, but it put you in exactly where you are today. It led to you making the decision to continue to want to change your life. It allowed you to you used it gainfully for your own advantage to take care of what you needed to take care of, but it also created who you are today as well because you went through the adversity and the struggle. So you were just as much as play in the scheme of I was trying to build a damn good team, but you were also helping me in a time where I needed to help see that, I could make a career out of what I was trying to do. Because there's a lot of people that don't think like me, and there are. I don't want to say there's a lot, but like they're not a dime a dozen. True leaders are not a dime a dozen. Most people are really in this for their own selfish gain, and that's it. And listen, selfishly, we're all here to make money, make more money, pay our bills, and have a good quality of life. That is the selfish portion of our game. And there's nothing wrong with that. The other side of it too, though, is that I also want to impact other people. And very few people think that way. Very, very few people think that way. I think we get lost over time. And a portion of that is our own greed. The other portion of that is that it's so hard to find people who want to be helped. And you were a stubborn asshole, man. You were stubborn. But knowing hear you say it out loud now, I wish I would have known that 5 years ago because I'm like, damn it, dude, this guy's so smart. I don't like I had to fight you to read the book and you read it and sometimes you didn't read it and like, okay, we'll get it done next week. And it was like, man, most people, here's what I've come up with today. Like I'll recommend books now and I'll recommend podcasts. And then people say they want to grow, but they don't put in the time, man. They don't put in the time. So I've stopped exhausting myself in a sense where only you got 15 people, 3 to 5 are going to take you 100% serious. The other 3 to 5 are going to think that it's just bullshit. Tony Robbins is just like another preacher on the stage selling you a bunch of hype and hope, right? And we know that hope is a bad drug. So just not a lot of people want to do the work, man. So for you at that time, I'm like, God, dog, I'm trying to help this dude. You were in pain. You had told me a little bit what you were going through, internally, and I understood that. So I'm like, I'm giving you a way out in my head. And obviously, as we got closer, I think you felt that I was more genuine. So as time progressed, you're like, okay, all right, this guy's not just doing this just to just do it and walk away, right? There became a genuine interest throughout the process, but a majority of people just don't take that type of feedback, right? And it takes a long time to get them. And I think it goes both ways. Number one, it's like that because they don't know that you're genuine and that you truly care about them because you're not their family, you're not a friend of theirs. They don't know your backstory. You don't only can share so much of your personal life with somebody. And additionally, people have been burned. So in your case, you've been burned by multiple people. So you have what I call PTSD. And I use this all the time in the retail business because there's so many bad associates, what people think are bad associates, but they're not bad. They've just been burned by bad leaders over and over and over again. So they don't trust. And I don't blame them. There's a lot of crappy leaders out there. So the downfall to that is it takes me a lot of patience and time to understand why they act out, why they're lashing out, why they have trust issues. And most people wouldn't do that as well. Like they would fire you. I don't have time for this. I'm going to write you off. I'm going to get rid of this person. I'm like, no, in the retail business, and you said it yourself, like we're 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old people. We're not hiring people with college degrees that are working 9 to 5. We're hiring people who didn't choose that route. So they're not going to be the best. It's my job to make them the best. And there's just not a lot of people out there like that, man. That would take the time to get to know you, to understand you, to figure it out. It just doesn't happen, dude. So that's where I was at is you weren't supposed to make it. You weren't supposed to get promoted. I was wrong for picking you, but I was told it's your choice, man. It's your store. You have to live and die by that decision. I said, okay, I'll make it happen. Don't worry about me, man. And fast forward 6 years later, that store was successful as shit for 2 years, man. Every segment of the business. I got promoted
Every single.
afterwards. You got promoted afterwards. Nick got promoted. Ray got promoted. Granted, some of those people had some challenges, but we created talent out of that store. Number one, we had a great time doing it, and we slayed it, as my
Yeah,
girls
it
would
was
say.
beautiful. I mean,
Slay.
to be honest, I think that was 2020 numbers pre 2020.
Yeah,
I
man.
don't think
It
that
was
store did
fun.
more sales until 2020, because definitely the next
No.
year after that, that was like freaking terrible. Continuing on, so now at this point, I am bent on being a store manager, want to move forward, want to make that salary, want to impact other people. We were together for, I don't know, what, year and a half, 2 years, something like that. And now at this point, I began to strive towards leadership. I began to strive towards being a better person. And then I got my own store to where it was 100% on me. This is where my journey literally leveled up. From here is where I started to do my own research. I started to read the motivational books. I started to develop in terms of
Why?
actually, huh?
What was the jump right there?
I saw it. I saw that I had the ability to do it, man. I needed to feed it. I needed to become better. At that point, like the leadership gap became clear-ish to me, but it also became something that I enjoyed. I saw that me being better, I saw that there was another option. Like it wasn't just a dead end anymore. It was I can do more. And it snowballed to like what it is today because even then I took that adventure and I did it, but I needed more after that, which is why I'm here. But from that point, I literally took it upon myself to grow. I read the most amount of books. I had the most amount of time. This is like at this point, I was a single father and I was just working and growing, working and growing, working and
You know what's
growing.
funny?
What?
I told my wife because of course naturally you got promoted, I got promoted, I moved to a different state, so we didn't talk as much anymore. And then obviously you and Mita started to date at the time, and naturally I came into town and we went out to that pool hall I think in Jack's. And
Yeah.
obviously Heather and Mita started to click a little bit, and then you were starting to talk about all the same shit that I talked about. I'm like, so fast forward a couple of days, I'm like, man, like, it's funny that Kevin is changing. Like, that was the person that I was trying to, I guess, in one piece of my brain, there's not many people that are like me in this journey who read the books and stuff like that. Like, there's just not a lot. So I was like, I desperately wanted you to like gravitate towards the book selfishly because I was like, fuck, man. Like, everybody thought that I was just crazy. Like, you're reading books or you're self help. And like, I still get told that I'm crazy for self help and dedication and motivation, whatever it is, right? Like, oh, you're just corny shit, right? Selfishly, I just wanted you to get to that level because I just wanted to have a conversation with you. Because 90% of people, they're just like, whatever, dude, whatever. And they go home and they watch Netflix and chill, right? So, like, we're not a lot of people, man. We are not a lot of people. We're in a very small crowd. And when you started to talk that way, fast forwarding like 2 years later, I'm like, God damn it, that's what I wanted him to do 2 years ago. Why now? Why now? And I told my wife that, and of course, like, I don't think we've ever talked about that, but that's what I want to know is why? Why did it take you that long? And whatever time is good, so there's no wrong answer. But how? Like, what was that moment that it just fucking clicked? That you're like, yeah, I'm going all in, dude. I'm gonna start reading these corny ass Tony Robbins books.
No, I would say that it wasn't a singular moment. It was at the time it became something that I needed to do, right? It was now my responsibility. I got promoted. It was my store. Like I can't fail. Not that I can't fail, like it's a physical possibility, but I won't let myself. So at that point, it became a serious thing. I started to learn how to strategize. I needed to impact my own group of individuals, right? Because before then, at the end of the day, like it was your store, it was your group of individuals. Now it's my store, my group of individuals. Like I have a family to raise at this store and I need them to be on point. I need them to be successful. So it became more real. So on the way to work, on the way home, at the end of the day, I was either listening to audiobooks. I personally do not like, and I still don't like to sit down and read a book in written words. I listen to audiobooks all day long. Like I'll even get a book, an audiobook, and read along sometimes. But I 100% prefer just to hear it. Like if I don't know, sitting down and reading words is just, I don't know. I haven't done it enough. I need to, but it is what it is. Like it just my preferred way
Listen,
of
I
taking
know
the information is audio.
I've name dropped it a couple of times today, so I'm going to name drop it again. I fucking hate reading too. But the first book that I ever read, by the way, was a biography on Babe Ruth, and that's
Interesting.
why I'm a Yankees fan. That's why I'm a Yankees fan. Like I never like obviously I'm not from New York. I lived in New York for a couple of years, but when I was in fifth grade, no, sixth grade, I'm sorry, I started to get really good at baseball. I don't want to say I came from an affluent family. I came from a family of students. They were
Yeah.
very intellectually intelligent, got good grades, straight A, stuff like that. And I was the sports guy, right? I was the class clown. I was the one that got in trouble. And of course, they're like reading books all the time. They're like, you should read books. And I lied. I said I read books because they kept on pestering me about it. And of course, I had an aunt, and I love her to death. But she used to ask me questions about the book that I read because she loved reading, and I would lie out of my teeth, and she knew I was lying. And she'd call me out on it. You didn't read the book. And I would continue to insist that I was lying just because trying to fit in, right? Unfortunately. But fast forward, I finally read a book. My dad got me the biography of Babe Ruth, and it was an easy read. And it was baseball, number one. So I was reading something that I fell in love with, and I was really good at baseball at the time. So I read it, and then I also became a Yankees fan at that time, but I didn't gravitate towards Babe Ruth. I gravitated more towards Lou Gehrig. So Lou Gehrig's my favorite player. I have a Lou Gehrig jersey, and there's a whole book that's written on him in a chapter in Discipline is Destiny that discusses why Lou Gehrig is one of the greatest all-time players and still is to this day. And it's really behind his mental mindset, his discipline,
Yeah.
and what he did to put himself through. But I fucking hate reading too. But I forced myself to do it. I read that book, but there were certain books that I did like, and that was the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership that you were referring to. I read it a couple of times, and there was a workshop in that book, if I remember correctly, that you had to answer some questions on. But that book was given to me by somebody. His name is Mike. He actually gave me the 17 Laws of Teamwork first by John Maxwell, which I still have my original copy from 15 years ago or 14 years ago. But then he gave me the 21 Irrefutable Laws as well, and I still have that copy. And I got that copy when I was promoted to store manager for the first time at the age of 22. So I don't like reading, but there are some good books out there that I've gotten like hardcore into where I'm like I can't put it down. Not a lot. There's only actually 5 that I can think of right now that I would read over and over again. But the rest of them, God, I have to force myself. Or audiobooks, dude, I'll just start thinking about something else. Like I can't stay focused. I have to force myself to read to focus.
Interesting. Now, for me, I can definitely hang with the audiobooks, no problem. It's just the written words. And don't get me wrong, it's strange. When I was like 13 or 14, I read a whole book series about stuff. It's just, I don't know, not my preferred method. But either way, it became real to me at that time. I had to make it happen. And this was a time where I had not much else, right? I was a single father. I wasn't in a relationship. I was focused on the store. So this is the great period of me becoming, more self-aware, wanting to strive, wanting to do more because I had nothing else, right? I had to look internally. I had to grow. I had to get myself out
Ooh.
of the situation that I was in. So that's that period for me. And it ended up working out perfectly fine, man. Like this group of people that I had, I took the store that I was at from, it was like 1.2 million or something like that in sales that year to 2.2, 2.5 years later. It literally went up $500,000 in one year, the other $500,000 in the next. And I made $1 million over the course, an extra $1 million in income over the course of the 2 years that I was there. My store got recognized as store as a quarter. I put up 50% comps 2 years over year. So literally my business grew 50% 2 years in a row. And I
And
got
you got
recognized for
interviewed
that.
by the executives, didn't you? You had to
Yeah, yeah,
sit there
no,
and
this was
talk
a
to
higher
this.
up. Yeah, 100% CEO, VP, and CFO were all in the conversation. There was a couple of other, board members and stuff in the background that weren't there. But yeah, man, like grew that out of the water. And
I
we
take
know
credit for
one
that.
of the people that were at the competition at the time. I don't know if you remember, but Frankie was at AutoZone down the street. Like they didn't have any business. I don't know what their numbers look like, but they didn't have any business. All of the customers that were there is from the professional side. So from the commercial side, we were knocking it out of the water. And me being bilingual, I built a bilingual team in a bilingual area, which they weren't able to do before. And I mean, this store, it doubled almost in the commercial sense, but it grew a good like 30-40% on the retail sense as well. And this was with a team of, I don't know, 12 individuals. So it was a small store in terms of physical size, but we went from number 7 in the district out of, I think it was 13 stores or 14 stores to number 2. And we're talking a store of 12 people, and the next biggest store had like 50. So we went from number 7 to number 2 in a district where literally every other store besides 2 had more employees. There was one store that had about 8, there was one store that had about 7, but everyone else was sitting at a team of about 15 to 16. And my store never made it past, I think it was 13 at one point. And we were number 2 in the district. So I had less people putting out more money. So everyone was busting their ass. Everyone was doing what they needed to do. Most of my employees at that time, the ones that I was able to take care of that got some sort of promotion, I was able to put a lot of money in their pocket as well. Like one of the guys that I spent a lot of time with, he went from, I don't know, from like $12 an hour or something like that all the way up to like 18 in a matter of like 6 months. So I was able to take care of him monetarily. All of the people that wanted more money and were able to put themselves in a situation to get promoted got what they needed to. Obviously, there were some individuals that, weren't promoted. I can't help you too much if you're not doing more. But, I was still, I did everything that I could to help everybody out. And I think for the most part, everyone ended up winning. The people that wanted to take to leadership, they learned. The people that didn't want to take to leadership on a personal level, I was able to help them out. I was able to give them mindset to help their families and help other things. So that was a beautiful time for me. And from there, I went to the next step, which is kind of where I am now, realizing that in that environment, the reason I put myself there was because of obligation. I didn't want to be a store manager. I didn't want to be a district manager, which was now in the conversation. Like I was taking 2 days out of the week to go talk to other store managers to teach them how to be better and working towards being a district manager. And to be honest, if I would have stayed in that environment for another 2 to 3 months, I would have gotten it. But I said no because that's not I didn't want to climb the corporate ladder, man. At that point, it was more work in terms of time for more money. But the trade off for time and money is not the same when you're working for someone else, right? The same amount of time can make you significantly more money when you're doing it for yourself or you're doing it in a different environment, which is the reason that I personally left that environment. So if I'm going to bust my ass and work 80 hours a week, like I'm going to bust my ass and work 80 hours a week in a field that my income isn't capped, right? Because I made $1 million, $500,000 pure profit over 2 years in the bottom line, and I made an extra like $3,000 in paycheck. The growth versus my personal income, it wasn't even justified.
Isn't it kind of sad? It's sad, bro. I mean, that listen, not all retail is like that. I just want to disclaimer that you were in small box retail, unfortunately, and that's why I left small box retail. Is they cap you out, and it is what it is. It's like playing minor league baseball, dude. You're playing double A ball at that point in time, so you're not going to make a lot of money in that environment. But it's a stepping stone. It's what you go to play triple A or to go play in the big leagues. But it's sad when you think about how much money you made the company. You were able to do that, which most people aren't able to scale business in less than 12 months or 24 months like that. Like they just are average low single digit comps. The average comp in most businesses is 3 to 5%, unless it's a growing hyper growth company. For you to do that, it's pretty remarkable. From a compensation perspective, it's pretty depressing.
Which,
Just
I
being
mean, it is
honest,
what it
right?
is. So I personally wanted to leave that environment to put myself in a different situation, to put myself in a situation where it was, I mean, less guided. To be very honest with you, man, the spot that I'm in now, working real estate, it's less guided, right? There's not a playbook. Yes, there are certain companies that you can work for that produce a little bit more, but at the end of the day, it's more of a challenge on myself. Can I become successful? Because the person that I became throughout that course was not allowed to flourish in that environment. And if I would have taken the next step, I would have been able to flourish and push myself a little bit more, but I didn't want to work that much for that capped of an income, right? Because you were telling me at that time, you were a district manager, you're like, hey man, I'm working more than I was before, 85, 90 hours for, maybe a 30% bump in income. I'm like, fuck man, I'm not willing to sacrifice more time with my kid for that little bit amount of money, because that's when I started to realize like I could make $10 an hour and $20 an hour. And yes, I'm a different person, but at the end of the day, I'm still living the same life. Yeah, I may have had a little bit nicer vehicle, but at the end of the day, I realized that $40 an hour, $50 an hour was not going to cut the lifestyle that I want to live. Like it wasn't enough, right? So I would have put myself in that next spot to go from, I don't know, it was like 25 bucks an hour or something like that to close to 40. I would have had a little bit nicer car, but I wouldn't have had more freedom. I would have had more restriction. I would have had to move away from my son. So I wouldn't have gotten more time. So my whole life wasn't able to elevate, just my work life, right? So I wasn't able to be more fulfilled personally, even though I may have been in terms of work. So at that point, it became like, what's the balancing act, right? Now I have the potential to make more money and I have the potential to spend more time with my kid. For the last 2 years that I've been doing real estate, I haven't missed a fucking baseball game, bro. I haven't missed one. I've been able to pick them up from school. So I have a more satisfied quality of life. I'm able to spend time here. And now I'm doing a lot more things with the podcast and stuff like that. But I was able to spend so much more time with the family at a situation where it was mentally less stressful and physically less demanding. I'm able to go to the gym now and be more, healthy as an individual. Back when I was working in that environment, I didn't have that time. I wasn't able to build it into my schedule. Don't get me wrong. I'm better at scheduling and better at doing stuff. Like me now, 3 years
Thank
ago, could have
God.
done all.
You know how many times, guys, that this guy was late for work? Jesus Christ. And he bribed me with Chick-fil-A breakfast. I have to call him and wake his ass up. I'm
It
on the
works
way,
though.
man. And yeah, 15 minutes away, you'd wake up 16 minutes before you had to be at work. And then you'd call me on the phone and be like, hey, man, I'm at Chick-fil-A right now. What do you want? I mean, a fat guy is
Because
not
I
going to
didn't
say
want to
no.
fucking do it, bro. I didn't want to fucking do
I know you didn't. Listen, do you think I
it.
wanted to fucking do it either? No. But
I didn't want to fucking do it.
what got me through it was you or Carlos or Ray. And I can speak to all the people that I've helped out throughout my career. Like I didn't want to do it for the company. And I did. I think I sold my soul to the devil at one point in time. And like I was a company guy and I realized the company's not for me. The company is for profit. And if they can leverage me to get profit, then why not? Now, granted, that's any NFL team, MLB team. So, like, you got to take care of you too. You got to negotiate your contract and your salary and your time, stuff like that, right? But what got me through it was you and the people that I served, man. That's servant leadership. It was tough, dude. And I think that when people say they truly don't know people. And I think I alluded to it. Like I wasn't happy, but most people at that time wouldn't have known. Like you and I talked a little bit financially and every single level of the struggle. 25, father of three daughters. My wife stayed at home because we chose that lifestyle, and that was a choice that the both of us made. Because if
Yeah.
I was going to hustle and grind, my wife was going to be there with the kids. At least somebody got to see the kids, right? At least both of us weren't working, because if we were both working, nobody is going to watch the kids grow up. And then the school system is raising my children, or a babysitter is raising my children. So we chose the lifestyle to where I was going to grind so my wife could stay at home and raise two children. And it was tough, dude. It still is tough. It's not as tough, right? It's tough to do that. You sacrifice your time. My wife sacrifices her time. But what got me through work was you and people like you. That's what made me look forward to going to work. So was it tough for me to go to work? Yes, man. Like on the drive to work, I was not happy. But as soon as I walked in those doors, man, I got fired up because I was there for you guys. And I guess another one of my mentalities that I probably didn't mention was like, man, nobody wakes up and says, I want to work at Advanced Auto Parts ever. Nobody. Don't. In fact, let me take that back. I think I was 14 or 15. I wanted to drive cars. I'm like, it'd be cool for a first job to go work at Advanced Auto Parts because I like cars, bro. I like Hondas. I want to be in the car scene. I'm like, man, instead of working at
That's why I went.
McDonald's, I want to go work in the car scene. So it was cool at that time. But when
Yeah.
you're in a career, nobody says, I dream about working for Advanced Auto Parts. Nobody does that, right? So like in my mind, it's like if these guys and gals are going to work for me, we're going to have a damn good time, because I know that 90% of the people in retail, unless they're a supervisor of some sort and a high end supervisor, they're living paycheck to paycheck. Their at home life is probably terrible. They're going through the struggle. They can't pay their bills paycheck to paycheck. They're not happy. So if I'm going to be their boss, like I'm responsible for your well-being. And that's the way I still take my job to this day. I am responsible for my associates' quality of life. In fact, Kevin, you're talking about me at the dinner table with your wife or your husband or your friends or your family, your mom, whoever you're talking to. Like I'm the topic of conversation when they go home. And if I don't do a good job leading you as people, I'm going to make your at-home life even worse. And that's what kept me up at night. That's what made me motivated to be a better person. It wasn't Advanced Auto Parts. It wasn't any retailer I've ever worked for. It was just the people, bro. And I felt bad. If you guys came in and you were fucking struggling, my job was to make your life just a little bit better. And if I could do that by being corny and energetic and singing "We Are the Champions" 5 times a day, then that made me happy, right? That's what the impacting others conversation comes down to,
I
and
get that.
life
I
sucks,
had to
dude.
do it afterwards. Like I get it. I get it now afterwards. Like at that time I didn't, but when I got my own team and I began to level up and I had to impact my own team, yes, 100%. Trust me, I learned that. I learned that. You set the bar for everyone around you, period. So your bar needs to be slightly higher. Always. It doesn't matter what it is. If your bar's low, they're always going to fall short. And you told me that, but I also learned that afterwards, right? No one, very rarely are people underneath you going to strive to be better than you. And if they are, you fucking suck.
Yeah, you're right, man. And you'll be lucky if you can impact somebody like you, or somebody along the way, right? That's just that's part of the gig, man. And most people just don't think that you're being authentic, because most people understand capitalism and corporate greed or whatever. So like, oh, this guy doesn't really care about me. So I took a vested interest in you. The only way that you were going to know that I cared about you personally, and from being an authentic person, was for me to vest myself into you, buy a book, by having conversation, by going outside, and I know. Listen, we always had fun because we started to play basketball and we started to play baseball, and probably shouldn't have done this because it probably would have been a conflict of interest at some point in time. But I don't necessarily regret what I did because I never treated you any differently. I never treated anybody any differently. I always stayed business, and we went to go play baseball or basketball. And we talk about stuff. We talk about work, and I'd give you advice, and I'd say, hey, we're not going to do that. Or I never lowered myself to like we were friends, right? And I think we got closer afterwards, but I never stopped working. I never crossed an integrity line. And I always made sure that some way, shape, or form we would discuss tying in work or business or, hey, this is a learning opportunity in everything we ever did, right? And then that went through, and we had a couple other guys that joined us. And you look at everybody's success, afterwards, man, like people still talk about us, at Advanced Auto Parts, by the way. They talk about those 2 years to this day. I've heard some chatter, and I've connected with some people, and I don't think you realize it, and maybe you do now, or maybe you do realize it, but I didn't. It's just because it's who I am. But somebody said something to me the other day, man, via Facebook, and it was like, dude, like that's so fresh on their brain. That was 6 years ago. They've never gotten that back.
Yeah.
So you don't truly understand the impact.
Yeah, I get it from a different perspective. Not from that store, but the team that I built. I still every once in a while get messages from different individuals like, "Hey, how you doing? How's it going?" Like not everybody, but some people still actually reach out and, appreciate that journey.
That's why we're here, impacting other people, man. That's why
Yeah.
it's fucking fun. I love it. It's probably the most rewarding, but also one of the hardest things to do. So, my dream is to still, I'll never leave retail in the sense of, I plan to leave corporate retail. And at some point in time in my future, I've got a plan, I've got a timeline, I've got an exit strategy, and I've got plenty of time left in doing what I do. Because I do love the organization that I work for right now, do love the journey that I'm on right now, but I also call it education, right? It's my college education. But one day, the wife and I want to open up a restaurant and a bar. And the primary purpose that I want to do that is because I can still impact other people through food or through drinks. Like, hey man, like I could save somebody, hopefully, from going off and jumping off of a bridge, metaphorically speaking, but physically too. Like I can save somebody. And the wife and I have talked about that. And everybody asks me, like, Kirk, what's your dream job? My dream job is not wealth, because that's not a dream job. But like absolutely I still plan on being wealthy, both spiritually and physically and financially. But my dream job is to be a bartender, to help other people, to have conversation with them, to see how I can leverage my journey to save somebody. That's my dream job. And I think through being a bartender, you can do that, in the right environment, in the right scene, right? So like the wife and I have discussed going to Costa Rica and opening up an American grill with a bar in it, or another country like that. Because of course I like the beach. Just another conversation, but like that's our goal. So like I'm still going to be in that environment of the service industry, but because I like to serve other people, and I'd
Yeah.
like to hope that I can make an impact on them.
Interesting. For me, it's a little bit different. For me, I haven't figured out exactly what it is just yet, right? Right now, I'm working on gathering real estate knowledge to be able to invest. And that's where I personally want my wealth to come from, is being able to own some real estate and do what I need to do, whether it be manage a couple of properties, yada, yada. I want my cash flow to be a little bit more passive. I want my income to depend less on what I do, so then I can have the ability to do other stuff. So
Well, let
that's
me
what I'm working
disclaimer
on.
that
Huh?
I would disclaimer my comment, like I'm not going to rely on that as my cash flow. I will have property and stock and equity and assets as well, but I would literally just own a restaurant for fun, because I couldn't stop doing what I do now. I couldn't do it, man. My wife and I have talked about it. The only difference is that my wife and I can do that together. You got
Yeah.
to think my youngest daughter will be 18 when I turn 44. So 45, I'm still going to be handsomely young. We can have a restaurant, and my wife and I can work together, because my wife had fun doing that when she was a teenager, serving other people, and she enjoyed that type of environment. And I would too. So would I do it every day, grind out 7 days a week? No, dude. I'd have a general manager working for me, and I'd be a bartender, right? I would be the bartender side of it, and then I'd still have passive income.
That's where I want to have the income. But I actually want to build something, man. So the corporate environment wasn't necessarily for me, but the business environment, I want to build something, and I haven't decided what, right? Is it going to be along the lines of real estate? Is it going to be along the lines of a different business? Is it going to have to do with motorcycle? I love two wheels. I don't particularly want to sell like motorcycle stuff, but I'm going to build something. It's going to be a company. It's obviously going to be set up in the corporate environment type thing, but obviously the role that I play is completely different. I want to put myself in a situation to where I can get a group of individuals, a group of friends that want to level up, and I want to take everybody to another level from a financial perspective. I have to get myself where I want to be first, right? I have to climb that ladder. I have to get to the top of where personally, individually, I want to be. Once I get there, I'm going to reach my hand back, and there's a group of individuals that I want to impact. I'm going to reach my hand back, and I'm going to ask each of these individuals to play a very specific role. I already have a pretty good list of individuals and a pretty good idea of the roles that they can play in this environment. I haven't figured out exactly how it's going to be deployed, right? Because it's going to be fun for everyone.
Am
It's
I
going
on
to
that list?
be, you have a role.
Okay, that was a no. You just said yes for the group. I'm heartbroken now. I'm just kidding.
You're in there.
Go
You're
ahead,
in
sorry.
there, but
Okay.
there's a role to be
Whew.
played. You're in there. You're in there.
I'll
There is
just
a
be the
role to
motivational speaker. That's okay.
No, it's you'll be surprised when that time comes. This is not something for now. This is something for maybe 5, 10 years down the line. And this may change, obviously, because everyone's different, right? If you're in a situation where there's a role and the opportunity's offered and you're not in that role, you don't want to be in that role, I get it. But this is something where I want to get myself to a point where this is going to be an act of fun, right? I want to put myself in a situation where I can build something with a group of friends so that we now have the ability to interact every day and grow every single day, right? When we come to build whatever this thing is, and I may not know because it's a combination of what the fuck everyone else wants to do, right? But if we're going to sit down and build something, for example, you and I, this podcast, now we have to interact. Now we have to deal with each other on a day-to-day basis. You're someone that I want to interact with and continue interacting with. So it's going to be something like that with a group of individuals that I know and trust. And it's just going to be fun. Like, we're going to drop the hammer. I need to build my knowledge base. So I have a role to play in this. I have to be able to get to the person that I need to be to make that happen. And then I need to make sure that this group of individuals is at the place that they need to be to make that happen. Not everyone's there yet, but there's conversations that I have every once in a while with certain individuals where I drop certain bits of knowledge. I just push just to see, right? Hey, what do you do with this information?
You want to impact other people, so that's the underlying theme. You still want to
Oh,
impact other people.
absolutely, 100% gonna impact other people, but I also it's fucking strange, right? Because this is like 10 years down the line, and there's certain people that I have certain conversations with where I say certain things just to see where they react because they're on this, we'll call it a list,
Hey,
right?
I don't know why this popped in my brain real fast, and this may be out of context, but I'm going to screw this up. And I think I say this every podcast. I'm going to fuck this quote up. Most people underestimate, what is it? Most people underestimate what they can do in 1 year, but overestimate what they can do in 10 years, or vice versa. You just
Yeah,
follow me real fast.
100%.
I think we could do it sooner than 10 years, bro. I think it needs to be 5 years.
No, I understand it. When it happens, it's going to happen and it's going to be beautiful. But there's certain people on this list that aren't where they need to be. Just being honest with
That's
you. I
fair.
think you are.
That's
I
fair.
think I'm close. But there's an individual that will say, I don't even need to mention it. It doesn't matter. This person's great at sales. 100% great at sales. They don't know it, but this person can bring whatever the product is and they can sell it. I know they can sell it, right? So they're selling stuff right now and they're making, I don't know, 150, $175,000 a year right now selling what they're currently selling, right? But they can make millions, right? It needs to be a product. It needs to be something that this company needs to have, and each person is going to have a pretty big role. I've thought about it, right? And I think I know when I'm going to drop that, but they're
You know,
not ready.
I'm glad you're there. I don't. This has been the life old the life debate, you know, and I think I said it a couple episodes ago. I'm like a master of none, but jack of all. There's a lot of things that I'm interested in, but I've never fully vested myself into one thing other than leadership and business. But with the wife and I talk about it. The restaurant's probably the thing that we talk about the most because I think we can impact other people. But I'm also in a similar position, not all the way. You kind of figure yours out a little bit more than me, but I just don't know what I want to do quite yet. And I want to make sure, and like when you know that you're passionate about it. The podcast I've been pretty passionate about and I want to do it. I like it and I enjoy it. But I just don't know what I want to go all into other than what I'm doing right now quite yet. I'm just not there yet, man. I'm enjoying the
So check
journey
this
for
out.
sure.
Let me fuck with you for a little bit. So, group of individuals, each person needs to serve a purpose, right? So, we're talking about Kirk here, but I'm trying not to give away too much at the same time. Do you think that you have the ability to build a corporate leadership team?
Yeah,
Do you think you have the ability to mirror a successful, growing corporate leadership team?
100%.
Do you think you have the ability to stage a corporate structure on paper that can then be deployed in a company, allowing you to be a leader, allowing you to help people grow, challenging you to be the boss with a group of friends.
Yeah,
Think
yeah.
about
I
it for a
mean,
second.
I got it a little bit. Naturally, I would say yes to that, but you'd also have to empower some people around you that are much smarter than me. But I could provide the landscape and the structure, and I can manage through that and lead through that for sure. I don't know where you're going with it, so I for
No,
sure you're painting a picture, but there's still a lot left to be painted. But yes,
I know. I know the answer is yes. I just got to get to the point where I can ask the question. But
yeah,
here's the thing though. When it comes to what I'm thinking about, I'm not where I need to be because my point in all of this is I need to be better at real estate. I need to be better at real estate investment. I need to be better at placing a business, right? Because I want to open something that's a retail business to a certain extent. I want to open something that provides a service, which lines up with what you want to do, which lines up with what everybody else needs to do. There's a salesperson, there's an IT person, there's a corporate person that understands that structure. From my perspective, where I want to fit in this puzzle is understanding the business placement, understanding the sales metrics, understanding where exactly this business needs to be, right? So if I get this group of individuals together, all of the pillars are going to be handled by these individuals, and then everyone else can kind of run it from there. Because the person that I was talking about from a sales perspective may not be able to build the sales team, but they can build a sales structure. They can teach sales. You can build the sales team, right? You have the ability to put a leader in place to do that, right? Going to have the ability to place this business and market this business, which is why we're making the podcast, which is why I'm making the motorcycle content. I need to learn how to advertise. I need to learn how to get eyeballs. Everything that I do has a purpose towards something, right? So all the activities that I do on a day-to-day basis are leading me in a direction of what I need to learn, right? So if you see me doing it, it's because I need to learn. And the only way to do that is by forcing myself to. So when I'm making these videos, when I'm sitting here making this podcast successful has a marketing aspect to it. And I need to learn that
yeah.
coming
You're
from real.
building the foundations, man. Like it takes. That's what people don't see, and I think we've talked about it. We'll probably talk about it. Somebody's heard something about it, but nobody sees the grind of before the success. And we're we still have quite a bit left of a mountain to climb, but you're building the foundation, and you're also building an arsenal, so to
Yeah.
speak, when it comes to marketing, advertising, podcast, learning, finance, real estate background, equity, asset appreciation, stuff like that. So I completely agree, man. That's where listen. I'm not where I need to be at by any means, but I took and made decisions and took steps that are going to put me into that positions in the future, and then you're going to learn along the way. So I totally agree. I think we need a general consensus and slice this up real fast. If I had to say impact, what does impacting others mean to me? I think we painted some pretty good pictures and illustrated it. But the question and or statement that I would leave you folks with today is you don't know the impact you have on others for a couple years, couple months, whatever it may be. Like you just don't know. You may not see it at first and you may get frustrated with it at first, but fast forward after you left your legacy, you'll see the impact that you made on other people. So don't lose focus on that because you might, and you don't realize how negative it could be. And how it could take you away from what you're trying to accomplish because I wouldn't have seen the impact that I was making on Kevin or you, right? Specifically, I didn't see it back then. Not being rude, by the way. Like I knew
No, I
you were
get
going
it.
to be successful, but I didn't see the heartfelt impact that I had on you until a couple years ago. So that's my general takeaway from this dialogue.
Yeah. Honestly, it's very interesting when you put yourself in a position to grow, when you put yourself in a position to be better, the people around you will gravitate towards that. Everyone that wants to be better wants to be surrounded by people that want to be better. Everyone that doesn't want to be better will be surrounded by that. So if you look around you and you see the people that gravitate towards you and you just look at who they are, look at their results, look at the people that strive with you and around you, you can see the impact you're having now. And just like Kirk said, you can't see that over the course of time, but you can tell a direction, right? If you're someone that everyone tells you that you make them happy or that you force them to grow or that you challenge them in some way, shape, or form, I would say that's a good thing. Whenever you're around certain individuals, if you're trying to impact them, they'll tell you and you can see it. somewhat. You're never going to see it until later on down the line, but always remember whatever it is that you do, someone's watching, someone's growing. If you're paying attention to other people, you can see that within yourself. You can see if you're having the right effect. And, for leaders and people that want to strive out there, you may not get that right away.
Keep
It's
planting the seed.
manifest. Yeah, keep planting the seed. There you go. It's manifesting. It's something that happens, right? If you grow, other people will grow with you, and it's just let life take its course, man. You don't know where the fuck you're gonna end up. You don't know where other people are gonna end up.
Typically, it takes somebody to weather the storm. It's like when you raise kids, man. You tell your kids not to do something over and over again, and then somebody else comes along and tells them the same damn thing, and they're like, "Holy shit!" Right? Or they face the adversity and they're like, "Oh man, Dad was right."
The one time
So
it clicks.
yeah, the one time it clicks, man. So for you, it clicked when you led your own team. You started to see all the intentionality behind what and why I did what I did, and it made more sense. And then you took your own spin on it and you started to do the same thing. At the time, it didn't resonate because it's like, to your point, I think you said it earlier. It's your team; they gravitate towards you at that time. But when you got your own, everything fell right into place. The dominoes were aligned, the stars were aligned. So it's all, listen, you're making an impact whether you think so or not, positively or negatively. You're making an impact. Everybody's impacted by a good leader, a bad leader, a good friend or a bad friend, a good person or a bad person. You're making an impact out there. The choice is up to you on what impact you want to make and what your legacy is. Until next time.
That's all, folks.